Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We have a very exciting show in store for you this morning. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We're going to be joined by Senate candidate. If you recall, I mentioned him on the program when he first announced that he'll be facing Gillibrand in 2024 next year, Josh Eisen. He's going to be our guest. You can find out more at newyorkforjosh.com. So that's coming up in a little bit. Thank you, by the way, to everybody who reached out at the number on the bottom of the screen during the holidays to wish us all a Merry Christmas. Let's go through a couple messages that we received that I have not had an opportunity to bring up yet. First up, good morning, Frank. I finally caught up on yesterday's program. So this was about Thursday's program. And as always, such a breath of fresh air to hear from Joe Sempolinski, who's intelligent, down to earth, and has a sense of humor much like yourself. A fair, logical mind is a real gift. Wishing you and yours a Merry Christmas. We're right back to you, and I can't agree more. I joke with Joe every time he comes on, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. I think he is the fan favorite on the show, arguably the one that gets the most comments. So thank you for that comment. Also, playing catch up here. Good morning, Frank, and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well. I'm enjoying a slow start on Christmas Day. Thanks for the music. I enjoyed it all, but I will say that Mary Did You Know is one of my very favorites. Yes, that's a classic. So that along with Xavier from the Salvation Army, and Oh Holy Night, which is another favorite, were exceptional. Growing up, I was a wannabe flutist, but never touched one, and his piece was very moving, calming. So again, a big thank you. Well, big thank you for watching our special Christmas edition of Frankly Speaking. What we did, if you weren't aware, we took the music from the Salvation Army fundraiser that we had a week before, all that great local music, and we put together for just a fun Christmas morning broadcast. So you can put it on if you were wrapping presents, if you were running real late, or if you were opening presents. I believe that is on YouTube now. Oh boy, look at this. We're blowing up with our virtual waves this morning. So yes, coming up in just a little bit, we'll be talking with Josh Eisen. Looking forward to that. If you have any questions, it's not too late to get them in. He is running for Senate. The number is on the bottom of the screen. Get those questions in. We have this morning, well, first of all, Governor Hochul's been very busy, and we haven't really followed this in a while. But when the program first started out, we were talking about the legalization of marijuana in New York and how it was just run so poorly from beginning to end. You had the illegal sticker stores popping up everywhere. New York was losing the supposed tax money we were going to get from this legalization. Now you've got to feel bad for the farmers who were promised, really, well, it's kind of a bait and switch, promised one thing and received a very different reaction. New York weed farmers said they are, quote, financially ruined after Governor Kathy Hochul vetoed legislation that would have allowed licensed marijuana growers to sell products to tribal retailers. The legislation was called the Cannabis Crop Rescue Act, and it was sought to assist farmers grappling with unsold cannabis yields, as it would have provided growers with another legal avenue to offload products amid lawsuits and delays since the sales of legal regulated adult use cannabis officially began last December. Boy, that doesn't seem right that it was just last December, does it? That was, what a dismal rollout. So another way that you feel for these farmers who thought, well, I'm going to change what I've been doing, make this cash crop. And then New York said, you know what? We're going to try to make sure that we emulate everything bad the other states that legalized it did, but perhaps even make it worse. I just saw that cross my desk, and as I said, we used to update you a lot on that on this program. We have not in a while, so I wanted to give you a quick update on that. We do have to take our first break because I don't want to run too late because I do want to get to Josh Eisen here in just a little bit. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Look at that beautiful view of Marcus Street and downtown Corning. That's where we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and you are watching Big Fox. One last update before we go to a break and we talk with our guest, Josh Eisen, who is running for Senate against Gillibrand. And we were so glad to see that there would be competition. Originally, there had been mentioned that perhaps there wouldn't be. So when we first saw that announcement, we were very happy to bring that to you. Giving you an update, if you recall in this program, this was a while back, But we brought up the fact that younger people, I guess, trying to be clever or trying to be what they think clever or the most shockingly clever. Because right now, the cool thing to do, if you're a young person, be the most aggrieved, be the most offended. And they started defending, or not defending, like promoting in a way, Osama bin Laden. Oh, dead air. Let's see, do we got dead air? Can you hear me? We'll see. But so what they said is 1 in 5 young Americans has a positive view of Osama bin Laden. This is coming from a Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom. But Daily Mail poll that revealed 3 in 10 Gen Zers think the views of the 9/11 mastermind were, quote, a force for good. This goes back in to what we've been talking about now for the last few months with the anti-Semitic language at college campuses. Where do you think this mindset comes from? That these young people actually thought that Osama bin Laden was, quote, a force for good. 1 in 5 young Americans has a positive view of the Al-Qaeda founder, Osama bin Laden. According to a disturbing result on a DailyMail.com poll, the alarming survey also found 3 in 10 Gen Z voters believe the views of the anti-Semitic terrorist leader who slaughtered thousands of innocent people were, and I quote, a force for good. Family members of 9/11 victims said the findings are horrifying and proof of a startling trend suggesting some in the younger generation are growing sympathetic to terrorists. Wow. Well, again, you've got to look at what we saw during all these college, I don't even like to call them protests. I don't even know if you'd call them protests, but we recognize this kind of rot on college campuses. And that's why I bring you that update, because it is something we've talked about so frequently that it's disturbing. It's horrifying, to use that word. But unfortunately, it's not as surprising as if I would have said that 10 years ago, especially after what we've seen on college campuses. Let's take that break because I don't want to kill too much time here. We're going to be talking to U.S. Senate candidate Josh Eisen. He's running against Gillibrand. You can find out more at newyorkforjosh.com. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And joining me over Zoom this morning, I'm so happy that he could come on. We've talked about him frequently on the program. Josh Eisen, thanks so much for being on the show this morning. Cool. Of course. I had my consideration. Yeah, I had your mic turned down a little bit. Yeah, we were so excited when we first saw the fact that you announced that you're running for Senate. Explain to me what went behind that reasoning. Why did you decide to run?
I decided to run because our state and our nation is beginning to tilt in the wrong direction. I think Kirsten Gillibrand has done nothing to harness the resources of our government, of the 30, 40+% taxes many of us pay, into something productive. When you have 100 senators, their job is to be presiders, almost priests of our legal system and the way our money is spent. And clearly Kirsten Gillibrand is busy toasting people with a champagne glass. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine doing that job for 6 years, let alone running for office a second time. I would be exhausted. I would leave everything on the table. It would be like asking Mahomes after he won the Super Bowl, let's roll it again, man.
Right.
Flag there in the first quarter. We're playing the whole thing again. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. She's able to stay in the job because she does nothing. She mm-hmm. drinks champagne, she eats caviar, and as my friend Curtis Lee would say, she's getting wine, dined, and pocket lined. I think in her case, it's appropriate.
It is, because when you go to think about it, how long she's been in office, can you really point, other than press releases that you may receive, can you really point to anything that you could hang your hat on?
No, I
not
can't.
Positive.
And I think it's sad because I just started doing the job of a senator, pretending I'm a senator. Mm-hmm. So what does a senator do? A senator looks at the law.
Right.
And he tries to see, is there anything in the law that I can find that can help people?
Right.
She's looking in the law for ways to hurt people. Mm-hmm. Right. When she's talking about forgiving loans for the 3% that go to Harvard and Yale, she's basically saying, I'm going to screw the other 98% of society that never even thinks about going to those schools. And I'm thinking about the farmers and the small businessmen who took agricultural loans, small business association loans that kill them. They have first liens, second liens, parents have to sign and co-sign. Look at a student loan, no collateral. For whom does Kirsten Gillibrand advocate? For the people who borrowed money to party. And I advocate for the people who borrowed money to work. And I'm looking at the law to see ways to advocate for them, to see ways to advocate for people, for example, in public housing. And I found laws that she ignores. There's a law that requires that, for example, public housing developments in big cities like Syracuse, like Buffalo, especially New York, where we have New York City Housing Authority, those properties must be transferred to the tenants. When our great senators and congressmen in the 50s, after the great victory in World War II, wrote laws, they wrote it from a perspective of strength. They wrote their songs proverbially in major, right? They weren't writing in minor chords. They were the Rolling Stones, right? They weren't Simon and Garfunkel. They were coming at you. Okay, they were arena rock. And they wrote a beautiful law that said that the purpose of public housing, the reason we are creating public housing is so that one day the tenants will manage it. There was an acute housing shortage, and they spoke of stores, of businesses. The law spoke of paying to train the residents, having money to train the residents on how to manage their properties, mainly because they never thought these properties would be in the ownership of government for more than 20 or 30 years. It's 70 years. The projects are dilapidated, but lucky for the residents, the properties on which these developments often sit are worth billions, sometimes perhaps even $1 trillion. The amount of money they can make, the wealth transfer from evil New York City, from evil Columbia University and evil Harvard to these residents would be enormous, transformative, and it's everything the left talks about. So here I am presenting it to them on a silver platter, not in a law we need to write, in a law that exists and has been kept secret from the residents of public housing. And who kept it a secret? Who's the wizard behind the curtain, hiding these treasures of law? Kirsten Gillibrand. Is it because she's incompetent, or is it because she's evil and sinister? Either one, the residents suffer, the pain and the challenge in our state continues.
Now, tell us a little bit about yourself. What in your background led you to say, I want to be a senator?
Nothing led me to this. I never thought of doing it.
I see.
In fact, my background would lead one to believe the last thing this guy ever wanted to be was a senator. You know, I got into scraps, I got into fights, physical, proverbial, legal, you know, but I've never had a legal issue with an employee, with somebody who worked for me, somebody that clearly I was holding the cards. I never leveraged my position, never leveraged ownership of a business or the fact that I paid a salary. So I think that's been a credit to the way I operate. But I was always ready for a fight. And I think now we need warriors. We don't need statesmen. If you don't have a state, you don't need a statesman. We got to take her out. And I think that my background, I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor. My father also went through communist Hungary. And the way he described the Warsaw Ghetto, the way he described the ghetto they put Jews in before they shipped them to Auschwitz to die, sounded a lot to me like the word ghetto. And I would look around as a kid from Queens. I'd get on the subway and get off to where the ghetto around me was. And I heard this word ghetto. And I looked around, and it looked a lot like, a public housing project looks a lot like the way my father described the ghetto in which Nazis put the Jews, just empty of stores, empty of business, kids scurrying back into their homes, afraid to be outside. Think about public housing in 88, 87, when I was a high school kid and I first saw these developments, and I knew they were ghettos, and I had only heard the word ghetto before from my father about the place they rounded up Jews before they murdered them in Auschwitz. So my sympathies have always been there. I was always curious. I never had the money till more recently. Once I did, certainly that was one of the first places I was going to go and check out and see how can we take government out of this and let the people do their thing.
Now, you mentioned you're a scrapper. One of the issues that I think as Republicans, there's almost two avenues that you have to fight on. You're going to have to fight against your opponent, but you're also going to have to fight against the media, who's just most likely not going to give you the coverage that you deserve. Have you found that already?
So far, I feel like if you hire a PR guy and you invest in it properly, like anything in business, the CEO, right, the candidate, whoever's the boss, right, that's me. I can't do everything, even if I think I could do everything better than everyone else,
Yeah.
right? Like often the quarterback on a high school team could actually play every position better, including punter and kicker. And
Right.
often he's the punter, he's the kicker, right? But he can't be the snapper and the quarterback,
Mhm.
right? There's a limit to what he could do. And I think a candidate, and again, I'm not saying I could do everything better. I'm not that high school quarterback. I feel there are people who do things better than me. And again, I got to really lean on the people who are working for me and get them to buy into what we're talking about.
Sure.
And I find that when the photographers showed up and the journalists show up, and I do speak to them, they are very aware I'm a different kind of dude. Forget about being a different kind of Republican. I'm different in so many ways. And then I hit them with the policy and with my understanding of the law, the fact I have a PhD in legal theory and in religion. Again, to me, as a guy who doesn't even care if his kids go to college, I know that there's no expertise in that stuff. But Kirsten Gillibrand respects PhDs from Columbia, right? She's still silly enough to force her kids to go to Stanford or some fancy school with a meal plan that takes business out of local community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her kids don't go to a bodega. They buy in the meal plan.
Right.
Who makes the money? The school. Local businesses, be damned. What do? They take an $18 an hour job at the school. But it's a union job. Great.
Yep.
It's a joke. That's what Kirsten Gillibrand is, an elitist who drinks champagne, eats caviar. I don't even know what caviar tastes like.
How do you think the campaign's been going? It's pretty early on.
I think, like anything else, the trick is to get the ball rolling in any business, and we're finally getting the ball rolling. We've developed some amazing content around some of the really great policies, and more importantly, the enforcement of law that we've found. There's certainly excitement in areas and places where Republicans have never been, like the Nitro Project. And I think the natural Republicans are very happy to hear there's somebody who's out there fighting to make government smaller and work for them, work for the farmers. Again, work for the people who borrowed money to work. And I'm not going to do anything for the people who borrowed money to do drugs and have sex and party at Harvard and Yale because they decided to charge $70,000 for something that they paid their teachers $4,000. I taught at Columbia. I had 30 people in my class who each paid $6,000. They gave me $4,000. I'm like, you're making $180,000. Hook a brother up, man. Give me 30K. Give me 30K. I'll get you 10 more students. I swear to God. But they wouldn't do it.
You know, it's interesting too, because obviously with this program and just my day-to-day life, anecdotally, so many people complain about the direction in New York and in general, but yet no Republican has won statewide office since 2002. Don't you think it's time for a change?
Of course I think it's time.
Well, I know you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's time for a change, but I think more importantly, it's time for a fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for a real hard-nosed fight. Kirsten Gillibrand never had it. Kirsten Gillibrand's kids need to answer for her when they walk around. Your mother is destroying lives. Your mother doesn't care about people who live in public housing. She doesn't care about farmers, and she doesn't care about gun ownership, something she used to care about. So
Yeah.
she's an all-around hypocrite, and she should be ashamed. And my kids will never be ashamed of me. I'll never do anything that my kids will be like, oh my God, my dad.
Yeah.
They know exactly who I am. I've been the same guy. I won't embarrass my kids, but I'm going to bring it to Kirsten Gillibrand, and she will be embarrassed in front of her kids because she guided her kids incorrectly to believe in places like Stanford and Harvard. She guides her kids into nonsense. And I think the way one raises a child is important. The way a child conducts themselves is a reflection on their parents. And for Kirsten Gillibrand and the fancy elitists to say, you can't bring kids into this, I don't know if I could use that word, but
Don't, because we're live.
blank them,
Yeah.
because they're just being hypocrites. They're trying to avoid the real issues. Because what do people like Kirsten Gillibrand do? They ignore their family,
Yeah.
right? While I'm making time for my family. So that's a value. Those are my values. I would never go to Washington for 15 years while my kids are young.
Yeah.
How pathetic. What kind of parent is that?
Well, she's always been weak when it comes to the debates. Do you think she'll end up debating you?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if it matters, then she'll show up for the debate because she'll have no choice. And if it doesn't matter, that means I didn't do my job. I got to make it matter. And I'm very close to Governor Pataki. I'm on his board. I'm actually a co-chairman of our humanitarian committee on the board of directors. I was recently in Israel setting up a PTSD program for first responders on the October 7th massacre. I'll be back there with the governor in January visiting those programs that we've set up. We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars very recently just for this program.
That's great.
I personally donated $25,000 with my company. And Governor Pataki always tells me, you don't win. You don't just beat, you don't win when you're fighting the champ. You got to beat the champ.
Right.
You got to beat the incumbent. You can't stand after 12 rounds and expect the judges to give it to you. You want to win, you got to make it obvious. And if we have her on the ropes in the 10th and the 11th round, she will show up to a debate because that'll be the only punch that'll get her out of it. And we're going to have her on the ropes. We already have her on the ropes. She's already responding to me, and I'm a nobody. Her staff is responding to me. In fact, I offered everyone on her staff a job, and one of them accepted. So she should try to figure out who that person is.
Yeah.
And I wonder if anybody told any of the others that I reached out and offered them a job.
Yeah.
They can mingle among themselves.
That's so great. Do you think being a presidential year will be to your advantage?
I have to make it my advantage.
Yeah.
Everything can be your advantage, right? The wind's blowing against you, run the ball.
Right.
The wind's blowing behind you, get within 50 yards, kick a field goal. You got to work with the conditions you have. So I think there's a lot of pluses to being in a presidential year. You could talk about larger macro issues. There's a little bit more attention to the race. I got to make it work for us. That's the bottom line. I can't ask, oh, it's a presidential year, therefore it's bad. And what am I going to do? No, it's a presidential year. It's a condition. I'll deal with it. It's snowing, we play. It's raining, we play, right?
Yeah.
Election day happens no matter what.
Are you ready for the year ahead? I mean, you took on a lot of responsibility with this. You're prepared.
I'm prepared. I don't waste time.
Yeah.
I never waste time. It's
That's
not
great.
like I was sitting around like Kirsten Gillibrand eating caviar hungover. I'm working. I don't drink. I'm lucid all the time.
Yeah.
You send me a text at 4 a.m. If I'm awake, I'll respond.
Yeah.
I'm responsive. I care about the people who work for me. So for me, being hyper engaged is just normal and the usual thing for me. And for me to be able to one day sit down and sit in a mahogany walled room for 8 hours a day, pondering law and legal theory and writing laws for the American people, that would be a dream come true. And I plan to be doing that over the next year. So for me, having the calm to sit and write laws for 4, 5, 6 hours a day like a monk or an imam or a great scholarly rabbi, and not like a professor at an Ivy League school who does drugs and is hitting on their students all day. No, that's not me. I'm working, I'm like a monk. I study, you speak to anybody who knows me, I'm reading, I'm learning, I'm writing, and I'm ready to write laws. I don't think Kirsten Gillibrand wrote a law in her life.
Just before we go, how can we help your campaign? I know people can go to newyorkforjosh.com to find out more.
I mean, I'm looking to hire people. I come from a background where the idea of working for free, for going to a campaign and saying, I'm here, I'll give you hours upon hours, and you give me nothing, that wasn't happening when I was 16 or 18 or 20. I had to support my parents when I got a little older. So in my campaign, everybody gets paid. I want poor people, wealthy people. I don't want volunteers. Even if you want to volunteer, the only volunteers I'll accept are the career political consultants who never do anything for nothing. Yeah. I'll take their work for nothing.
Okay.
But if you're a worker, you come to me, I'll pay you at least $20 an hour. I have a minimum wage on my campaign, and I'd love for people to come and learn and work and make money on my campaign and learn how to do business, and when the campaign's over, to live the American dream. And I guarantee that to anybody who works on my campaign.
What a great idea. Well, we do have to go, but I want to wish you a happy holidays and a happy new year. I hope we can do this again soon.
Anytime. Hopefully we get to meet in person.
Absolutely. Come around the Southern Tier. We'll do it in studio.
In studio.
All right. Thanks. All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Oh, by the way, I don't want to forget. Sorry, I got distracted. By the way, we're broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio, YDC TV. Big Fox. Josh Eisen So I received comments already. Vote Eisen. Yes, got a couple of those, by the way. We got a couple of waves, too. And Josh Iron Man Eisen for Senate. I like that. He did make the boxing connection there that you got to beat the champ. So that wouldn't be a bad boxing name. Josh Iron Man Eisen. Yeah, I really appreciate that all working out. As I mentioned to him, or it's not anything he's not aware, that it is, I just think the media doesn't cover Republicans. I actually saw an article just yesterday essentially saying, well, Gillibrand, not even mentioning any opponents, Gillibrand will be winning again. It's just assumed now. But again, I got to go back to that point, and I know he agreed, and I would have been shocked if he didn't, but no Republican has won statewide office in New York State since 2002. 2002. So when do we change course? Because it's not just Republicans griping about what's happening in New York. It's pretty much everybody you know. So I just thought that was really interesting. NewYorkForJosh.com. I appreciate him being on the program. We do have quite a few other issues to get to as well, but as I mentioned, I hope to have him on again soon. And I know that a lot of times when you're campaigning, I'm sure he'll be here in the Southern Tier at some point along the way, and we'll keep you updated on that so that we can get that information for you so you can go to rally. That's a really interesting idea. I've never heard a candidate do that before where there's no volunteers. You're going to get paid if you're going to work for him. I think that's a pretty clever, and I think that's pretty unique. I can't think of when I've heard of that before, unless, of course, it's somebody that can't get volunteers, but I know that he can get volunteers. You already see it, or he could have. You can already see it because there is, well, again, a month or two ago, they were saying, Gillibrand's probably not going to have any opponents. So you remember when we first brought it to you that there was an opponent. It was relief. You want competition, right? But speaking of opponents, there's a lot to get to here at the presidential level as well. Oh, did you see, completely unrelated to anything in our district or in our state, but did you see Lauren Boebert, that she's actually going to switch districts so she can go to a more, I guess, GOP-friendly area? Because if you remember, she barely won the last time. Now that guy's out fundraising her, allegedly. So maybe the switch, I don't know. She seemed to sell it okay. Representative Lauren Boebert announced Wednesday that she will no longer vie for her current congressional seat representing Colorado's 3rd District and instead run for office in the more Republican-friendly 4th District. Quote, I am going to do everything in my power to represent the 3rd District well for the remainder of this term as I work to earn the trust of grassroots conservative voters in the 4th District to represent them in 2025. Oh, so she's got a little campaigning to do. I was thinking it would be next year. It's the right, I guess maybe that could still mean that. It's the right move for me personally, and it's the right decision for those who support our conservative movement, she said. All right, just giving you all the news this morning. By the way, according to Simon Rosenberg, and I'd love to hear your take on this. We are coming up on a break. I realize that. Okay, I'm gonna let you stew on this, marinate on this for a second. Simon Rosenberg, a Democrat strategist, wants you to know that Biden's 2024 chances are much stronger than people realize. We'll talk about it when we come back, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts on the numbers on the bottom of the screen. Let's take that short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio right there on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and you are watching Big Fox, and this is Frankly Speaking. So, Biden, this is what I said before break. Biden's 2024 chances are much stronger than people realize. That's according to Simon Rosenberg. He says, as we head into 2024, the conventional wisdom is that Democrats are on the back foot for next year's election. But there are 3 reasons I am optimistic that 2024 is going to be a good year for Democrats. First, President Joe Biden has kept his central promise in the 2020 election that he would lead the nation to the other side of COVID successfully. The pandemic has receded. Our economic recovery has been better than any other G7 nation. And he continues with this. Again, I just think some of this is a hard sell. Because, again, you've got to look at what people are actually experiencing. But according to Rosenberg, rents are softening and gas prices and crime rates are falling. Domestic oil and renewable production are at record levels. The annual deficit, which exploded under Trump, is trillions less today. The strength of the president's record is only matched by the strength of his party. You get all views on this program, on Frankly Speaking. Second, I'm skipping around here a little bit, just so you have an idea. Second, the strength of the president's record is only matched by the strength of his party. I don't think it's widely understood how strong the Democrat Party is right now. Okay? And finally, while Democrats keep winning, conventional wisdom continues to overly discount Trump's historic baggage and MAGA's repeated electoral failures. Despite these repeated failures, Republicans are on the cusp of nominating Trump again, who this time is an even more degraded and dangerous version of MAGA than he was in 2020. Now, we know this is going to be the talking point. This is not anything new to you. MAGA is going to be thrown around a lot. Threat to democracy. I have a couple of those articles. For all these reasons, as we head into 2024, I am optimistic that Joe Biden and the Democrats will once again beat Donald Trump and hopefully this time send MAGA into the dustbin of history where it belongs. Okay. Now, The Guardian says we are sitting on a powder keg as the U.S. braces for a year and an election like no other. And this is where they talk about authoritarianism and the threat of Trump. It will be a fight marked by numerous unwanted firsts. As the oldest president in the country's history, meaning Biden, is likely to face the first former U.S. president to stand trial on criminal charges. A once aspirational nation will continue its plunge into anxiety and division about crime, immigration, race, foreign wars, and the cost of living. I would say that we are very divided in this country, but I would not say those topics are necessarily new to a presidential campaign. Now, Joe Biden being 81, that's new, and of course, president that he's got to stand trials for former President Trump. So sitting on a powder keg. We're just going through a couple things quickly because I know we've got to move along here. Stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street, Corning. So another, I'm not going to say salacious headlines, but these headlines this morning are a little bit forceful. How about this one? Nikki Haley closes the gap on Donald Trump. So I started thinking, what's changed from the last couple of days that we were on? I mean, I know that she was doing better, that she was probably going to be in second, at least in New Hampshire, but still was a far distance. Did I miss something? Nikki Haley is now Donald Trump's main challenger in the 2024 GOP primary. Although she still trails the former president by a large distance. A Rasmussen report survey of 792 likely Republican voters shows that the former South Carolina governor is the second place candidate in the GOP primary at 13%. Okay, so she's second with 13, while Trump is way out ahead with 51%. So just, this is from Newsweek, and it's not, it's nice to keep updated on Rasmussen. It does show that DeSantis isn't doing great as we near New Hampshire and Iowa. It's crazy. I mean, it's right around the corner. But why wouldn't it say Nikki Haley, tops DeSantis? Just a weird way to... Nikki Haley closes the gap on Donald Trump. Closes the gap. So she's at 13%. And Trump is at 51%. I don't know. As someone that is maybe, you could argue, hypercritical of the media sometimes, I just don't know if that's the way I would put that article, but it is good clickbait, right? Got my attention. Nikki Haley closes the gap on Donald Trump. I guess she received some... Do I got to take a break already? I guess she received some pushback or some criticism because she was answering a question, this coming from the New York Post, answering a question about the Civil War, and she did not mention slavery as a cause of the Civil War, and what they're calling, this is not a good reputation to have because Vice President Harris has it. See, isn't it interesting how the media is starting to turn just a little bit? And I like the New York Post, so it's a little different. Turn just a little bit on Nikki Haley. Maybe that's because there started to be rumors, and I know Donald Trump Jr. spoke out against this, but there were some rumors that maybe Trump would pick Nikki Haley for VP, and that's when you can see the media start to say, wait a minute, did we go too far in praising her? Because again, the people telling us the only way Republicans can win are people that never want to see, is by picking Nikki Haley, are the same people that never want a Republican to ever win. So you've got to take that with a grain of salt. But what I'm saying is her response was labeled a word salad. And that, it's getting a little cliche if I'm being honest. It's kind of like nothing burger or chaos or whatever. But word salad. And Harris has that, and unfortunately, it's a legitimate reputation for Harris. But I don't know why they're starting to throw that word around at Nikki Haley, though I guess this was not the most articulate answer. The White House hopeful appeared caught off guard by the question and failed to mention the antebellum South's peculiar institution in her response. Quote, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run. The freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. I think it always comes down to the role of government and what the rights of the people are. And I will always stand by the fact that I think government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. So she went on to talk about capitalism, Second Amendment, First Amendment rights. But just receiving a little bit of pushback. Kristen Pushaw, DeSantis' rapid response coordinator, mocked Haley's convoluted answer, describing it a word salad regarding the Civil War. She also accused conservative media personalities of ignoring her response in an effort to, quote, not make her look stupid with her own words. DeSantis' press secretary, Brian Griffith, characterized the moment as a giant mess of her own making. There you are. Giving you all the updates. We got to take another short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. This show is going very quickly. Thank you for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. Nobody's ever lost their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Will Trump be the first? Coming from the LA Times. It's at every level, isn't it? The star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I'd love to know some of the people that have a star, that still have it, because it's never happened before, taking away, and look at their histories. I guess it's Andrew Ruddick who's on this mission. The reasonably conveyed message to the millions who have walked past that plaque since 2021 is the city's endorsement of a man who attempted a coup against the United States, Ruddick told the Los Angeles City Council. Turns out there's a lot of moving pieces here. I just wanted to bring it up quick. But it's not just the City Council that has jurisdiction over it. It also has the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and the Hollywood Historic Trust. But wouldn't it be interesting, and maybe they go through this, one person that's still on there in 1960 was convicted of murdering his wife 1 year later. So it does go through some of these. I wonder if Harvey Weinstein and people like that. Anyway, but no, Trump is where this guy's passion is, to take that star off the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which maybe tells me some people have a different opinion of the importance of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. But when we come back, we're going to wrap things up. We do got to take our short last break, and then we've got two quick stories, and then our little bit of housekeeping here. I better take it. I don't want to run too late. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Hakem. So the Colorado Republican Party petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday to overturn a state Supreme Court ruling that barred former President Trump from appearing on the primary ballot in Colorado. This is a quote. The Republican Party has been irreparably harmed by this decision. The state has interfered in the primary election by unreasonably restricting the party's ability to select its candidates. As a natural and inevitable result, the state has interfered with the party's ability to place on the general election ballot the candidate of its choice, and it has done so based on a subjective claim of insurrection the state lacks any constitutional authority to make. It is going to be interesting to follow this, what this all means. That's why I wanted to update you. Also, I know on this program, whether it's with former Congressman Tom Reed or former Congressman Joe Sempolinski, we talked about taking serious the real threat posed by China, and where a lot of politicians aren't because it's a kind of a follow the money scenario. President Xi, Chinese President Xi, presented an alternative, and this is something that I don't want to say predicted on this program, but something we've talked about, touts an alternative to Western capitalism in his speech on Mao Zedong. Why I bring this up is because they are a real threat. They want to be a world superpower, right? So if they can be, how do they do that? There's various avenues. They can look like, peacemakers, if they can, stop some of these wars or whatever. And in this case, present an alternative for various countries to look at. Instead of, if they don't want to go with America, they've got this option with China. And ultimately, if they have their way, they will be the world superpower. I just want to give you an update on that. That was at a speech that he gave, I believe, yesterday, but it could have been the day before. All right, we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you again to United States Senate candidate here in New York, Josh Eisen, for being on the program this morning. You can find out more at NY for Josh, nyforjosh.com, nyforjosh.com. He is running against Senator Gillibrand. We're going to keep you updated on his campaign, and of course, goes without saying, if Senator Gillibrand wants to come on, if any of her people are watching, you see the number on the bottom of the screen. I'd love to. Josh Eisen, his people reached out to me. So Gillibrand would be more than happy to have you on the program. Just reach out at that number, 607-358-3131. But again, Josh Eisen running for Senate. Find out more, nyforjosh.com. Really appreciate him being on the program. And it's going to be fun to follow that campaign as we need. There's going to be so much to follow next year. Wow. Yes, it's going to be a wild ride, folks. So please join us tomorrow as we try to cover as much as we possibly can, starting at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Wow. Did that show go really, really quickly? Well, I think the interview went so smooth. It's nice having that conversation, so it just went very quickly. But we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. And let me say, I look forward to it already.